What is your best joke? A termite walks into a bar and asks, is the bartender here? My grandfather has the heart of a lion and a lifetime ban from the zoo. A snake walks into a bar and the bartender asks how. What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One weighs a ton, and the other is a little lighter. And the Lord said unto John, come forth and receive eternal life. But John came fifth and got a toaster. How do you tell the gender of an ant? Throw it in water. If it sinks, it's girl ant. But if it floats. Man goes into a butcher's. Asks, what happened to your assistant? Butcher replies, fired him. Man asks, why's that? Butcher replies, because he was putting his dick in the bacon slicer. Man asks, what did you do with the bacon slicer? Butcher replies, fired her as well. What's the difference between an owl, a piano, and a fish? You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. 3 men were in a boat and had 4 cigarettes. But no lighter. So they threw 1 cigarette overboard. And the whole boat became a cigarette lighter. A man goes into the doctor and says, I think I have hearing problems. Doctor, can you describe the symptoms? Man, sure. Homer's fat and Marge has blue hair. What's the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi? People from Dubai don't like the Flintstones. But people from Abu Dhabi do. What has 2 butts and kills people? An assassin. Why do Norwegian warships have a barcode on the side of them? So that they can Scandinavian. What's a foot long and slippery? A slipper. Someone found a hole in the nudist colony fence. Police are looking into it. As Mickey and Minnie were before the judge in divorce court. The judge looked at Mickey and said, listen here, Mr. Mouse. I cannot grant you a divorce from Minnie. But why not, Your Honor? A stunned Mickey asked. I have reviewed all the information you submitted to the court and I can find no evidence to support the allegation that she's crazy. Explained the judge. Your Honor, Mickey exclaimed. I didn't say she was crazy. I said she was fucking goofy. Bear walks into a bar and says, can I have a Coke? Bartender says, what's with the big paws? Bear says, I don't know. I was born with them. Guy trying to get hired at a farm. And the farmer says, have you ever shoot a horse? The guy says no, but once I told a donkey to fuck off. My penis used to be in the Guinness Book of World Records. But then the librarian asked me to take it out and leave the building. 2 fish in a tank. One turns to the other and says, do you know how to drive this thing? Yesterday I couldn't figure out whether someone was waving at me or the person behind me. In other news, I lost my lifeguard job. Not my original joke. 3 construction workers have lunch together on top of a tall building. The first one opens his lunchbox and goes, another tuna sandwich? I eat tuna sandwich every day. If I have to eat another tuna sandwich I'm going to jump. The second one opens his lunchbox and also goes, man. Another turkey club sandwich. I can't stand it anymore. If it's the same tomorrow, I'll jump. The third worker opens his lunchbox. Sees a meatball sandwich. And like the others he says he'll jump if he has to eat another meatball sandwich. The next day the 3 men open their lunchboxes. The first one got a tuna sandwich. He writes a goodbye note and jumps. The second got a turkey club and does the same. The third sees he has a meatball sandwich and follows them. At the funeral the wives of the 3 men meet. The first one weeps and says, if only I had known. I would have made him something else. The second wife is angry and goes, he never told me he wanted something else. If he had just talked to me. They notice that the third wife just looks sort of confused. So they ask her what's wrong. She replies, I just don't get it. He always made his own lunch. 3 men had a very late night drinking Guinness. They left in the early morning hours and each went to their home. The next day, they all met for an early pint. And compared notes about who was drunker the night before. The first guy claims that he was the drunkest, saying, I drove straight home and walked into the house. As soon as I got through the door, I blew chunks. The second guy said, you think that was drunk? Hell, I got into my car and wrapped it around the first tree I saw. And I don't even have insurance. The third guy proclaimed, damn, I was the drunkest by far. When I got home, I got into a big fight with my wife. Knocked a candle over. And burned the whole house down. The room was silent for a moment. Then, the first guy spoke out again. Listen, guys. I don't think you understand. Chunks is my dog. 3 mathematicians walk into a bar. The barman says, do you all want a beer? First one says, I don't know. Second one says, I don't know. Third one says, yes. A guy stops into a bar after work. The bar is situated on the 3rd floor. He sits down at the bar next to another dude and orders a drink. After a few minutes, the other dude drains his glass. Stands up and just runs and jumps out the window. The man is left speechless. But 2 minutes later the other dude walks back in the door and sits back down at the bar as if nothing has happened. The man is too confused to ask about what just happened. So he just continues sipping his drink. A few minutes later, the other dude drains his glass again. And proceeds to run and jump out the window again. And then stroll back through the door. Sit back down and order another drink. So the guy says, screw it, to himself. Necks his drink. And runs and jumps right out the window. The bartender turns to the other dude and says, you're a real prick when you're drunk. Superman. Don't remember where I heard this from. But I copied it to my phone years ago and it still makes me cry. The Boston Symphony was performing Beethoven's Ninth. In the piece, there's about a 20 minutes long passage during which the double basses have nothing to do. Rather than sit around the whole time looking stupid, some bassists decided to sneak off stage and go to the tavern next door for a quick drink. After slamming several beers in quick succession, as double bassists are prone to do, one of them looked at his watch. Hey, we need to get back. No need to panic, said a fellow bassist. I thought we might need some extra time. So I tied the last few pages of the conductor's score together with string. I'll take him a few minutes to get it untangled. A few minutes later they staggered back to the concert hall and took their places in the orchestra. About this time, a member of the audience noticed the conductor seemed a bit edgy and said as much to her date. Well, of course, said her date. Don't you see? It's the bottom of the 9th. The score is tied. And the bassists are loaded. I bought shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what he laced them with. But I've been tripping all day. I took the shell off my racing snail to make it go faster. If anything, it just made it more sluggish. What do you call an indecisive bee? A maybe. Once upon a time, there was a triangular lake, whose 3 shorelines each formed the border of one of 3 neighboring kingdoms. Their histories steeped in bitter intertwined rivalry. The first kingdom was rich and powerful, filled with wealthy, prosperous people. The second was humbler, but still held its fair share of wealth and power. The third kingdom was struggling and poor. It barely had an army to rally. After years of being on the back foot in comparison, during a particularly tense political conflict, the kingdoms eventually dissolved their long-standing treaty that prevented any kingdom from claiming the lake for themselves, and went to war over control of the lake, which would grant the victor a significant strategic advantage, not to mention a valuable source of resources through which to prosper. The first kingdom sent 100 of its finest knights, clad in the best armor and each with their own personal squire. The second kingdom sent 50 knights, with fine leather armor and a few dozen squires of their own. The third kingdom sent their one and only knight, an elderly warrior who had long since passed his prime, with his own personal squire. The night before the big battle, the knights in the first kingdom drank decadent imported liquors and partied into the late hours of the night. The knights in the second kingdom weren't as well off, but had brought an ample supply of their kingdom's renowned locally brewed mead, which also afforded them the opportunity to drink well into the night. In the third camp, there was no such revelry. With just 2 members in their army, they had been forced to only bring the essentials, having to carry everything themselves. Not that the kingdom had much in the way of decent alcohol to offer their heroes in the first place. Stoically, the faithful squire unwound a rope and swung it over the branch of a tall tree, making a noose, from which he hung a pot. He diligently filled the pot with the scraps of food they had brought, preparing a simple stew, before dishing it up and serving the old knight before sitting down to join him for a humble dinner. Neither said it out loud, but both knew this was almost certainly their last meal. The next morning, The knights in the first two kingdoms were hungover and unable to fight, while the elderly, frail knight in the third kingdom had suffered the cold winds blowing in from the lake overnight. Weary, his joints aching, he was unable to stand. And despite his best efforts, the squire was unable to improve the knight's condition by the time the horn bellowed, signifying the start of the battle. In place of the knights, the squires from all three kingdoms picked up their weapons and began to fight. The battle lasted long into the night. But by the time the dust settled, only one squire was left standing, the squire from the third kingdom. And it just goes to show you that the squire of the high pot and noose is equal to the sum of the squires of the other two sides. It's kind of a long one but a good one. One day, St. Peter was manning his station at the pearly gates of heaven, denying or allowing people to enter heaven. Eventually, a guy comes up and starts talking to Peter. And Peter says, "Tell me about the day you died." The guy says, "Man, it was terrible. I got off work early to try and catch my wife cheating on me. As I'd expected she was. Well, I got home to my 14th floor apartment and found my wife naked, wet, and in bed, obviously. She had just been having sex. So I searched all over my 14th floor apartment and couldn't find anyone. So I decided to have a cigarette on my balcony. Lo and behold, I looked down and saw a naked man hanging by his fingertips. And in a rage, I grabbed a hammer and smashed his fingers. Lucky for him, he landed in some bushes and started to scramble out of them. So I went and pushed my fridge off the edge. It landed on him and killed him. But the act gave me a heart attack. And I died. Peter let the man in and asked the next guy, "Tell me about the day you died." The second man said, "Man, it was awful. I was in my 15th floor apartment doing acrobatics. But see, I have a better range of motion if I'm naked when I do my acrobatics, but I misjudged a jump and fell out my window and off my balcony. Luckily, I caught myself with just my fingertips on the 14th floor apartment balcony. But then some crazy bastard came out and smashed my fingers with a hammer. I managed to land in some bushes. But as I was trying to get out of the bushes, the mad lad dropped a fridge on me. And I died." Peter chuckles to himself and allows the man entry. Then Peter turns to the next man and says, "Tell me about the day you died." The third man says, "Okay, so get this. I'm hiding in a fridge. What do you call a dog with no legs? You don't call it. You go get it." A horny gorilla sees a lion bent over a small stream, taking a drink. The gorilla runs up behind the lion, grabs on, and has his way with him. The gorilla then takes off running, with the very angry lion on his heels. As they run through the jungle, the gorilla gets a bit of a lead, and sees a British safari camp ahead. The gorilla enters the camp, grabs some khakis that are hung out to dry, and puts on pants, a shirt, and a hat. He sits on a chair by the campfire and grabs a copy of the local paper, pretending to read, to hide his face. The lion enters the campsite and lets out a huge roar. He yells, "Did anyone see a gorilla run through here?" The gorilla, in full disguise, calls out, "You mean the one that fucked the lion up the ass?" The lion exclaims, "Oh my god, it's in the paper already?" 3 men, 1 British, 1 Japanese, and 1 American are trekking through the jungle when they're suddenly captured by a tribe of cannibals. They are brought to the chief, who tells them, "We are going to kill you, eat you, and use your skin to make our canoes. However, we will allow you to choose how you die." The Englishman asks for his gun and a single bullet. He loads it, points it at his head, and says, "God save the Queen." Bang! The Japanese man asks for his sword. They give him his sword. He says, "For honor." Before committing harakiri, the American asks for a fork. They give him a fork. And he starts going to town on himself, stabbing himself all over his arms, his legs, his torso. He's bleeding like crazy. But he's not dying quickly. Finally the chief asks what he's doing. The American looks him in the eye and yells, "Fuck your canoes." Ha! Nice try, Carlos Mencia. A photon walks into a hotel and the concierge comes up and says, "May I take your bag, sir?" The photon replies, "No. I'm traveling light." Not original by any means, but still a classic. Some of you may be more familiar with the racist version. So 3 guys get stranded out on an island and captured by a cannibal tribe. Not wanting to die, they beg and plead with the tribe's king to let them go. The king tells them that there are 2 ways to earn their freedom and escape back home. The first is to fight their toughest tribe member gladiator style, while the second is a mystery challenge. Desperate and with nothing to lose, all 3 men agree to the mystery challenge. So the king says to the 3 men, "Go into the jungle and collect 10 of any single type of fruit. When you're done, bring them to me." The 3 men enter the jungle to go on their fruit hunt. The first man comes back, proudly carrying a stack of 10 bananas. He presents them to the king, hoping he'll be pleased. But the king declines and tells him the real point of the challenge. It's not over yet. You are to insert all 10 of the fruits in your anus. If you wince in pain, laugh, cry, or show any other emotion, we will throw you into the boiling pot. The man hesitates, but proceeds to insert the 10 bananas up his anus. 1, 2. But the tearing of his anal cavity is too painful and he cries out of agony. The cannibals throw him into the pot. The second returns, and luckily picks cherries. The king tells him to do the same task, as well as the fate that came across Banana Man. The second guy is happy because he is certain he can insert all the cherries in because of their small size. So he proceeds to insert the cherries with ease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But he bursts out laughing, causing the cannibals to also throw him into the pot. In heaven, the first and second guy meet and discuss their unbelievable misfortune. Halfway through the conversation, the first guy says to the second guy, "I was watching you from up here and I saw that you nearly completed the task. But all of a sudden you laughed. Why?" The which the second guy replies, "I couldn't help it. I saw the third guy bringing pineapples. Not my best but my favorite because my grandpa would tell it to everyone. And I miss my grandpa a lot. How do you catch a bear? Dig a big hole and line it with ashes. Put peas all around the edge of the hole. When the bear goes for a pee, kick him in the ash hole. ETA. In my FB memories. It was 10 years ago today that we lost my grandpa. No wonder I've been thinking of him. I posted this joke for him on this day. In my memories. I'd give my right arm to be ambidextrous. Stole this for the leftovers. What's the difference between a pimple and a priest? One waits until you're 13 to come on your face. Just read this one here recently and haven't had the right chance to deploy it in IRL yet. So I'm still a bit bemused by it. How many gorillas does it take to change a light bulb? Just one. But it takes a shitload of light bulbs. Why did the bird go to the gym? To work on his pecs. Do you know why divers fall backwards off the boat when they are diving? Because if they fell forward they'd still be in the boat. 2 whales are at a bar. On turns to the other and says BWWWWHHHHAAARRRRRGGGHHH. Be loud with your best whale sound. The other whale looks at him and says, "Gimme your keys, Frank. You're drunk." A Roman walks into a bar, holds up 2 fingers scissor and says, "5 beers. Please." A lady walks into a bar and orders a double entendre. So the bartender gives it to her. Did you hear about the scarecrow that won the Nobel Prize? He was outstanding in his field. Why couldn't the lifeguard save the hippie? 'Cause he was too far out, man. Why can't you trust atoms? They make up everything. A man of faith hears on the radio there's going to be flooding. He shrugs at the radio and says, "God will take care of me." He wakes up the next day and the first floor of his house is flooded. As the water rises, he climbs up into the roof. A guy floats by in a canoe and says, "Hop in, brother. The water's rising." He waves the guy off and says, "God will take care of me." Now the water is halfway up the roof. And he's straddling the roof ridge. A woman in a boat speeds up and says, "Get in the boat. The waters are going to keep rising." The guy waves her off and says, "God will take care of me." The guy is now on tip-top of the chimney, the water swirling around his neck. A helicopter hovers overhead and guy rappels down and says, "Grab on." Again. The guy says, "No thanks. God will save me." The guy wakes up at the pearly gates. In line is Saint Peter is waiting for Windows to install updates. He sees God through the gates on his throne. Jesus sitting on his lap. He yells up at God. "Why didn't you save me?" God yells down. "I sent you a canoe, a boat and a helicopter." A priest, a pastor, and a rabbit walk into a blood bank. The nurse asks the rabbit, "What's your blood type?" The rabbit says, "I think I'm a type O." Some of the jokes on this thread are god-awful. And not in a funny way. Thumbs up to the ones that aren't about killing babies. You got a smirk out of me, smiley face. Went to the doctor the other day and he said that I need to stop masturbating. When I asked why, he said, "I'm trying to give you an examination." A man is driving down the road and breaks down near a monastery. He goes to the monastery, knocks on the door, and says, "My car broke down. Do you think I could stay the night?" The monks graciously accept him, feed him dinner, and even fix his car. As the man tries to fall asleep, he hears a strange sound. The next morning, he asks the monks what the sound was. But they say, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." The man is disappointed but thanks them anyway and goes about his merry way. Some years later, the same man breaks down in front of the same monastery. The monks again accept him, feed him, and even fix his car. That night, he hears the same strange noise that he had heard years earlier. The next morning, he asks what it is. But the monks reply, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." The man says, all right, I'm dying to know. If the only way I can find out what that sound was is to become a monk. How do I become a monk?" The monks reply, "You must travel the earth and tell us how many blades of grass there are and the exact number of sand pebbles. When you find these numbers, you will become a monk." The man sets about his task. Some 45 years later, he returns and knocks on the door of the monastery. He says, "I have traveled the earth and have found what you have asked for. There are 145, 236, 284, 232 blades of grass and 231, 281, 219, 999, 129, 382 sand pebbles on the earth." The monks reply, "Congratulations. You are now a monk. We shall now show you the way to the sound." The monks lead the man to a wooden door, where the head monk says, "The sound is right behind that door." The man reaches for the knob, but the door is locked. He says, "Real funny. May I have the key?" The monks give him the key, and he opens the door. Behind the wooden door is another door made of stone. The man demands the key to the stone door. The monks give him the key, and he opens it, only to find a door made of ruby. He demands another key from the monks, who provide it. Behind that door is another door, this one made of sapphire. So it went until the man had gone through doors of emerald, silver, topaz, and amethyst. Finally, the monks say, "This is the last key to the last door." The man is relieved to no end. He unlocks the door, turns the knob, and behind that door he is amazed to find the source of that strange sound. "But I can't tell you what it is because you're not a monk." Two hunters are out in the woods when one of them collapses. He doesn't seem to be breathing and his eyes are glazed. The other guy whips out his phone and calls the emergency services. He gasps, "My friend is dead. What can I do?" The operator says, "Calm down. I can help. First, let's make sure he's dead." There is a silence. Then a shot is heard. Back on the phone, the guy says, "Okay. Now what?" Three friends are sleeping in the same bed. The morning after the left one goes, "Wow guys. Tonight I dreamed the hottest chick giving me the best handjob of my life." The right one then replied, "No way dude. I had the same dream." The guy in the middle, "I dreamed I was skiing." Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts. I'm still pretty embarrassed about this one. There is this young guy who went to work in the oil fields in Alaska, in the middle of nowhere. After a few months of only guys around and not a single woman to be found for miles, the guy goes to his boss and asks, "How do you guys deal with not having a woman to have sex with for months on end?" The boss replied, "There is a barrel out behind the kitchen area that has a hole in the side. Put your dick in it and you will be taken care of." The young guy tries out the barrel and has a huge release very quickly. He is overjoyed. He goes back to his boss later and tells him he will be using the barrel every day. The boss, "Every day but Tuesday." Young guy, "Why can't I use the barrel on Tuesday?" The boss, That is your day in the barrel. Picked up a hitchhiker and they were so grateful. He said, "Thanks man. Most people never pick me up. They're always worried that I might be a serial killer." I told him I wasn't worried about that. Because the odds of 2 serial killers in the same car are astronomical. What do you call a wreath full of $100 bills? Aretha Franklin's. What's the difference between a cat and a comma? One is a pause at the end of a clause. But the other has claws at the end of its pause. What were Michael Jackson's pronouns? He. A woman is on trial for murdering her husband, allegedly using his guitar collection. The judge asks the woman, "So, first offender?" The woman says, No. First a Gibson, then a Fender. A sheep, a drum, and a snake fall off a cliff. Ba dum tss. When a Norwegian robot analyzes a bird, it's Scandinavian. A guy goes to his doctor. He says, "Doctor, I have songs alternating running through my head and they won't go away." Doctor, "What songs are they?" Guy, "What's new Pussycat in green?" Green grass of home. First one song, and then the other. Doctor, "You've got a case of Tom Jones syndrome." Guy, "Tom Jones syndrome? I've never heard of that. Is it very common?" Doctor, "It's not unusual." Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the idiot's house. Knock knock. Who's there? The chicken. So a chicken and an egg are laying next to each other in bed. The chicken looks at the egg and says, "Well, I guess that answers that question." Why did the condom fly across the room? It was pissed off. I was walking with a friend of mine and we came to this field where there was a well in the middle. We threw some rocks down there. But we couldn't hear them hit the bottom. Eventually, we noticed an anvil on the edge of the field. We dragged it over, dropped it in, and heard a very satisfying splash. As we were leaving, we saw a goat running full speed at the pair of us. After a moment of confusion, we started running away from the goat. But it was gaining on us. As we came to the well, my friend and I jumped to either side. But the goat ran straight into the well. A few days later, I'm in town with this same friend. And Farmer Daniels approaches us and asks if we've seen his goat. We explain that he chased us and fell into a well. And Daniel says, "That's so strange. Because I tied that goat to an anvil." This guy walks into a bar, sits down right up front and orders 2 shots of vodka back to back. He downs them pretty fast, so the bartender approaches him casually. "Hey man," the bartender says. "Can't remember the last time I saw someone shoot vodka straight that fast. Everything alright?" "Yeah, I'm doing alright," the man replies. "I just had my first blowjob before I came here." The bartender raises his eyebrows and smiles. "Oh well, congratulations. How about a 3rd round on me to celebrate?" he asks. The man shakes his head. "No thanks," he says. "If 2 didn't get the taste out of my mouth, I don't think 3 will." What has 4 letters, sometimes has 9, and never has 5? A proctologist decides it's time for a career change. He has enough money from his practice that he can live comfortably doing something he truly enjoys. Rather than spending his days looking into people's buttholes, he sets his mind to becoming an auto mechanic. He goes to a local college to learn the trade, studies as hard as he can, learning how to fix, repair, and build all sorts of cars. Eventually, it is time for his final exam. He is told that he must fully disassemble and reassemble a car engine. After finishing the exam, he finds out that he got a mark of 150%. Worried that this is an error, he asks his teacher, who tells him that it is not a mistake. "I gave you 50% for fully disassembling the engine correctly. Another 50% was for reassembling it correctly. The extra 50% was because you did the entire thing through the exhaust pipe." A woman is in line at the grocery store, and the cashier is ringing up her groceries. The cashier says, "Let me guess, you are single?" And the woman says, "Wow, you can tell that just by the groceries I'm buying?" And the cashier says, "No, you're just really fucking ugly." What did one lawyer say to the other lawyer? "We are both lawyers." What's the difference between an epileptic oyster shucker and a hooker with diarrhea? One of them shucks between fits. It's the 2024 presidential election. And there's 3 main candidates in the running. First is Joe Biden. looking to keep the presidency. Second is Donald Trump, looking to take back the presidency. And lastly is Obama, wearing a sombrero and a mustache, going by the name Juan Bama. As the election results are tallied in, it's apparent that it's a perfect three-way tie in both the popular vote and the Electoral College. The nation is in uproar. Nobody can reach a decision as to how to choose the next president. But at last a solution comes forward, a literal presidential race. Whoever can run the fastest lap around the White House, timed by a Secret Service member, will be sworn into office. First up is Donald Trump. He boldly states, this will no doubt be the fastest lap around the White House. Perhaps even the fastest lap run anywhere. Ever. But, not being in the best shape. He takes 18 minutes and 34 seconds. Next is Joe Biden. He doesn't waste any breath for trash talk or boasting. He just readies himself at the starting line and, at the count, takes off. He's running fast. Really fast for someone of his age. At least for the first 5 minutes. But he forgets where he's going. And finishes his lap as a leisurely walk around the grounds, taking 26 minutes and 49 seconds. Lastly is Juan Bama, who runs like hell around the White House. He's running fast. Faster than he'd ever run before. He completes his lap, collapsing across the finish line, and looks up desperately at the Secret Service member. What was it? He asks. What was my time? The agent looks down at their stopwatch. 12:03. Juan Bama looks at them in disbelief. Well, he sputters. That's got to be some sort of record. The Secret Service member shakes their head. No, actually, Bush did 9/11. What's stronger than family? And #X200B. Whatever tree Paul Walker hit. This is the one that got me the most upvotes on art jokes. A lawyer, a priest and an engineer meet every week for a game of golf. One day, they get stuck behind the slowest group of players they had ever seen. They were hitting the balls all over the place, getting stuck in just about every trap and patch of rough, and missing just about every putt. Finally, the group gets frustrated and heads to the clubhouse to find the manager. What's with that group of players? They're the worst I've ever seen. They're holding up the course. The manager looks sheepish. They're retired firefighters. They lost their eyesight running into a burning orphanage to save the children. They love golf. So I let them play for free for charity. The priest looks ashamed of himself. As a man of God, I feel terrible for getting angry at those men. At my next sermon, I'll see if I can get a collection going for their families. The lawyer likewise looks chagrined. Same here. I'll check with my firm and see if we can't open a case to get them awarded restitution for their pain and injuries. The engineer says, why can't they play at night? How many flies does it take to screw in a light bulb? 2. But how did they get in there? What is the best way to get rid of gum and hair? And #X200B. Cancer. Why is there no pregnant Barbie? Because Ken came in another box. What did one tampon say to the other tampon? Nothing. They were both stuck-up cunts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.